It's a scandal that rocked Penn State University, brought a community to its knees, destroyed lives. Jerry Sandusky sits in jail now, awaiting sentencing after being convicted on 45 counts of abusing 10 boys over 15 years. Legendary coach Joe Paterno died in January, his reputation tarnished. Tonight, however, one of the central figures at Penn State is speaking out for the first time about what he knew, his regrets, and the report that implicated him in the cover-up. Penn State, an insider speaks.
We didn't know. I certainly didn't know.
It was a drumbeat, over and over again, a steadfast refusal by former Penn State President Graham Spanier to concede that he failed in any way to protect the children who were victims of abuse by longtime assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky, an iconic figure on campus who was able to repeatedly molest young boys in the locker rooms of one of the nation's most respected sports programs, and in his home, where he claimed to be mentoring kids who saw him as a hero. The tragedy that unfolded would transfix the nation, bring one of the country's leading universities to the brink, and leave even the school's most ardent supporters wondering, did an institution dedicated to education really care more about its storied football team than it did about Sandusky's unfortunate victims?
This is tough on the whole family.
The man with the answers to these questions, the president of the university, who resigned in November of last year and who's not spoken publicly about how this could have happened until today.
He was a child predator who fooled a lot of people.
Spanier says he didn't know about Sandusky's actions which would lead to Sandusky's conviction on 45 counts of sexual abuse of young boys.
Never in my time as president of Penn State did I ever once receive a report from anyone that suggested that Jerry Sandusky was involved in any child abuse, in any sexual abuse, in any criminal act.
One reason he says he didn't know is because of what he wasn't told by two of his trusted lieutenants, athletic director Tim Curley and senior university official Gary Schultz, about Sandusky's actions on two occasions. The first was in 1998.
There was an email that I was copied on, one of about 30,000 emails a year that I didn't respond to, just a piece of information saying somebody was being interviewed, and then there was a follow-up email about 5 weeks later saying the matter had been concluded.
Sandusky was cleared of any criminal wrongdoing in that incident. But then there came a second incident, reported in 2001, when graduate assistant Mike McQuarrie witnessed what he would later testify was some sort of intercourse between Sandusky and a young boy in a locker room shower. That's not how Spanier says it was described to him.
It was described as horseplay. And I said to them, are you sure that's how it was described, as horseplay or horsing around? And they said yes.
When you hear horseplay, what do you think?
I guess I was thinking back to my own childhood where horseplay involved throwing water around, snapping towels. I didn't ask about it, but that's what I was conjuring up.
Shouldn't that have set off some sirens, do you think?
Well, we all have the advantage now of hindsight many years later of knowing about Jerry Sandusky.
The Attorney General believed it was much more than just horseplay. Based in part on McQuarrie's testimony, Curley and Schultz were later indicted. Meanwhile, Spanier came under suspicion because of a single email which seemed to indicate that he was part of an effort to keep from reporting the incident to authorities.
I want to read it to you. This approach is acceptable to me. The only downside for us is the message isn't heard, and you put quote marks around the word heard, and acted upon, and we then become vulnerable for not having reported it. The approach you outline is humane and a reasonable way to proceed. Do you remember writing this email?
I don't remember it, but it sounds like me. It seemed reasonable in light of the two things that we agreed would happen.
But you used the word vulnerable.
It may not have been the best choice of a term, but...
well, it certainly speaks to the idea that your foremost concern is with regard to the impact it would have on someone or something other than the children.
It was a reaction to the possibility that we didn't want this to happen, and If he didn't accept that and understand it, we would be disturbed by it and perhaps need to take further action. But the message we got back was that he heard the message and was agreeable.
For Spanier, he says it's inconceivable that he would not have acted on behalf of the victims had he known about any sexual abuse. For he is not only a trained family therapist, he too is a survivor of childhood abuse himself.
Well, I've had, for example, 4 operations as an adult to correct injuries from my childhood that were inflicted by my father. But I can tell you from that personal experience that I've never met anyone who has had a higher level of awareness about such issues than I have had.
Over his long career, Spanier prided himself in running the university what he calls the Penn State way, and the football program was its heart, with Joe Paterno, the winningest coach in major college football history, and his spotless reputation for winning clean.
It was one of my great privileges in life to have an opportunity to work with Joe Paterno.
They would find themselves out of their jobs on the same day. Paterno fired. Spanier, he says, gone on his own terms.
Do you feel like you failed those kids?
I wish, in hindsight, that I would have known more about Jerry Sandusky and his terrible, terrible hidden past so that I could have intervened, because it would have been my instinct to do so if I would have known more about him, but I did not.